June 5th, 1944. The largest invasion fleet ever assembled. Over 5,000 ships stretched across the English Channel. American commanders stood on the deck, watching something no one had ever seen before. One general whispered words that would never be forgotten. Another commander realized they were about to change history forever. But what they said in those final moments before the mission began would reveal the true weight of what they were about to face. June 5th, 1944. The south coast of England. General Dwight Eisenhower stood on a cliff overlooking the sea. What he saw took his breath away. Ships, thousands of them, stretching as far as the eye could see. More than 5,000 vessels packed together in the English Channel. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in human history. Eisenhower turned to his assistant. His face was serious. He knew what was coming next. The biggest mission of the war was about to begin. But standing there, watching all those ships, he said something that revealed just how heavy the burden really was. Something that showed the true weight on his shoulders. His words weren't about victory. They weren't about glory. They were about the men. The thousands of young soldiers who were about to risk everything. What Eisenhower whispered in that moment would haunt him for the rest of his life. Hours earlier, the scene was completely different. The harbors were quiet. Ships sat waiting in the dark. No one knew if the mission would even happen. The weather was terrible. Storms rolled across the channel. Waves crashed against the docks. High winds made sailing almost impossible. Eisenhower had a decision to make. Go now or wait? His commanders gathered around him. They looked at the weather reports. They looked at each other. Everyone knew what was at stake. If they waited too long, the enemy would discover the plan. If they went too early, the ships might not make it. One admiral stepped forward. He had been planning this mission for over a year. He looked at Eisenhower and said something simple, something that changed everything. The men are ready. That was it. 4 words. But those 4 words set everything in motion. The largest invasion in history was about to begin. By dawn, the entire fleet was moving, ship after ship, slowly pulling out of the harbor. The water was still rough, but they were going. American commanders stood on the decks. They watched their ships fall into formation. Destroyers, battleships, transport vessels, all moving together like a massive parade. General Omar Bradley was on one of the lead ships. He had trained these men for months. He knew many of them by name. As the fleet stretched out across the horizon, Bradley turned to an officer beside him. The officer asked him a question. "Do you think they're ready, sir?" Bradley didn't answer right away. He stared out at the ships, thousands of young men packed inside. Most of them had never seen real battle before. Then he said something that revealed his deepest fear, not about the mission, not about the enemy, but about whether he had done enough to prepare them. His answer was just 3 words, but those 3 words said everything. "I hope so." That was Bradley's response. 3 words filled with doubt, filled with worry, because the truth was, no one really knew. This mission had never been done before. No army had ever tried to land this many troops on a defended beach. No fleet had ever crossed the channel with this many ships. The risks were enormous. Enemy forces waited on the other side. Fortifications lined the coast. Obstacles covered the beaches. If the mission failed, the war could be lost. But the commanders didn't talk about failure. They couldn't. The men needed confidence. The men needed to believe this would work. So the commanders kept their fears hidden. They walked the decks. They checked equipment. They spoke to the troops. But inside, many of them carried the same question, the same terrible thought that wouldn't go away. What if we're sending these men to their end? One commander couldn't keep that thought to himself.
Admiral Kirk commanded the naval forces. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Armada move forward. Kirk had been in the Navy for 30 years. He had seen battles before. He had led missions across the Atlantic. But this was different. An officer approached him. "Sir, the fleet is in position." Kirk nodded, but he didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He looked out at the thousands of ships, at the thousands of men, and he said something that no one expected, something that broke the professional distance commanders usually kept. "I pray we're not leading them into a trap." The officer froze. Those words hit hard, because Kirk wasn't just some nervous rookie. He was one of the most experienced naval commanders in the entire fleet. If he had doubts, what did that mean for everyone else? But Kirk wasn't done. He said one more thing, something even more revealing. "Every man out there is someone's son." Kirk's voice was quiet, almost like he was talking to himself. Every single one. That's what weighed on him. Not the strategy, not the ships, not the mission itself. It was the men, the human cost. Back on the English coast, Eisenhower was thinking the same thing. He had written a letter earlier that morning, a letter he hoped he would never have to send. It was addressed to the American people. It took full responsibility if the mission failed. He had already signed it, already sealed it. It sat in his pocket as he watched the ships disappear into the fog. One of his aides stood beside him. The aide could see the tension in Eisenhower's face. "Sir, is there anything else we can do?" Eisenhower shook his head slowly. "Now it's up to them." But before the ships reached the beaches, one more commander made a statement that would be remembered forever. Lieutenant General Walter Bedell Smith was Eisenhower's chief of staff. He handled all the planning, all the logistics, all the details that made the mission possible. Smith had worked for months, coordinating every piece of the invasion. He knew the plan better than anyone. He knew where every ship was supposed to go, where every unit was supposed to land. But even with all that planning, Smith knew something that terrified him. No plan survives first contact. That's what he told the other officers. It was a military truth everyone understood. Once the mission started, everything would change. Things would go wrong. Units would get separated. Communication would break down. The plan was just a guide. After that, it was up to the men on the ground. Smith looked at the maps one last time. He had done everything he could. But now, Standing there, watching the fleet sail away, he felt something he rarely felt: helplessness. And then came the moment that defined everything. The ships reached the French coast at dawn, June 6, 1944. The sky was gray, the water was cold. From the lead ship, the commanders could see the beaches. They could see the obstacles. They could see the fortifications. This was it. No turning back now. General Bradley picked up his radio. He was about to give the final order, the order that would send thousands of men onto those beaches. He paused for just a moment, one final moment of silence. Then he spoke. His voice was steady, calm, but everyone listening could hear what was underneath. All units, commence the assault. The largest invasion in history had begun. And the words those commanders said in those final moments revealed something more powerful than strategy or tactics. They revealed the weight of command, the burden of sending men into battle, and the hope that it would all be worth it. The D-Day Armada revealed more than Allied forces' leadership. It showed the weight commanders carried before the Normandy invasion assembly. Eisenhower's message about the Great Crusade wasn't just World War II military strategy. It was about courage, about Allied unity and strength in historic moments. These historical military quotes remind us: heroic moments in World War II came from leaders who understood the cost. The Supreme Allied Commander's words still inspire us today. That's true leadership.